AITA for dumping my boyfriend instead of getting rid of my dog. I 32F adopted my dog Loki when he was just 8 weeks old. He'd been dumped on the side of a country road with his siblings. A local rescue found them just in time, and when I saw his little face online, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I drove 2 hours to meet him, and the moment he climbed into my lap, I knew he was coming home with me. That was 6 years ago. Loki has been with me through everything. Breakups, job changes, family issues, moving house, you name it. He's never left my side. He's honestly the sweetest dog you could ever meet. He's friendly with everyone, loves kids, never chews anything he shouldn't, and thinks every person he meets is his new best friend. I know some people think it's weird when someone says their dog is family, but that's exactly what he is to me. When Loki was around a year old, I bought a caravan. I'd always wanted to travel more, but I hated the thought of leaving him behind every few weeks or constantly relying on family to dog sit. The caravan solved that problem. Over the last 5 years, we've traveled all over the country together. We've stayed by lakes, beaches, forests, and mountains. Every trip has been an adventure, and some of my favorite memories involve waking up early, making coffee outside the caravan while Loki ran around chasing birds. He's my best friend. Around a year ago, I met David, 32M, through a mutual friend at a birthday barbecue. We clicked almost immediately. We both loved hiking, cooking, road trips, and trying new restaurants. Conversation flowed naturally, and by the end of the evening we'd exchanged numbers. Over the next few months, we started dating. Things actually moved pretty quickly. We spent most weekends together, went on several trips, and he fit into my social circle really well. Right from the beginning, I was completely upfront about Loki. I'd send pictures of him, tell funny stories about him, and mention that most of my travel plans included him. David never seemed bothered by any of it. In fact, whenever I talked about Loki, he'd usually smile and say something like, "He sounds like a good dog." I remember asking once if he wanted to come on one of my caravan weekends. He politely declined, saying camping wasn't really his thing. Fair enough, not everyone enjoys it. Over time, he started spending more and more nights at my place. Loki adored him. Every time David came over, Loki would greet him at the door with his favorite toy and wag his tail so hard his whole body shook. David wasn't overly affectionate with him, but he wasn't mean either. He'd give him the occasional pat and then go about his day. Looking back, maybe I should have noticed that he always seemed slightly annoyed whenever Loki wanted attention, but at the time, I just assumed he wasn't much of a dog person. 6 months ago, we started talking seriously about moving in together. Both of us rented. My apartment was larger, had a small garden, and was closer to both our jobs, so it made the most sense for David to move into my place instead of us finding somewhere new. We began discussing how we'd split bills, where his furniture would go, and what we'd need to buy together. Everything felt exciting. One evening, we decided to go out for dinner to talk through the final details. Halfway through the meal, David looked at me and asked, completely casually, "So how do you think you'll feel when you have to get rid of the dog?" I honestly thought I'd misheard him. I just stared. "What?" He repeated himself. "When you get rid of Loki." I laughed because I genuinely believed he was joking. He wasn't smiling. I asked him where on earth this was coming from. He shrugged. "I just assumed once we moved in together, you'd rehome him." I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. I asked why he would possibly think that. He sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. Because everything revolves around the dog. I asked him what he meant. He started listing examples. "You never stay overnight in hotels. You always have to be home. We can't just decide to fly somewhere for the weekend. You plan holidays around whether the dog can come." I just looked at him. "Yes," I said, "because I have a dog." He rolled his eyes. "I want more freedom." I explained that having a pet comes with responsibilities. If you choose to own a dog, you don't just abandon them whenever they're inconvenient. He replied that people rehome pets all the time. Then he actually said something I'll never forget. "It's just a dog." I felt every bit of affection I had for him disappear in that moment. I calmly told him Loki wasn't just a dog. He's been part of my life for 6 years. He's family. David leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. I think you're being selfish. I blinked. Selfish? You're choosing a dog over your future. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I reminded him that I'd never hidden the fact I had a dog. He'd known from the day we met. He'd stayed at my apartment dozens of times. He knew exactly what my life looked like. None of this was new information. He said he assumed I'd eventually grow out of it. Grow out of owning my dog. I asked if he'd seriously expected me to dump Loki the moment our relationship became serious. He simply said, I thought you'd prioritize us. I replied, I am prioritizing someone who's never asked me to abandon the people he loves. He didn't appreciate that. The rest of dinner was awkward. When we got home, he continued arguing. He said I was letting an animal control my life. I pointed out that adults make commitments all the time. Some people have children. Some care for elderly parents. I happen to have a dog. He insisted that relationships require compromise. I agreed. Then I asked him what compromise he'd actually made. He wanted me to give away my best friend. What exactly was he sacrificing? He didn't have an answer. Instead, he accused me of loving my dog more than him. I told him that wasn't the issue. The issue was that he expected me to abandon a living creature who depended on me because it made his life slightly less convenient. That's not something I'd ever do. He packed a bag and left that evening. Over the next few days, he sent several messages saying I was throwing away an amazing relationship over a dog. Our mutual friends started hearing different versions of the story. Most of them contacted me asking what had happened, because they couldn't believe he'd actually asked me to get rid of Loki. When they heard the full story, every single one of them sided with me. Couple admitted they'd always thought David came across as controlling. Apparently, this wasn't the first time he'd expected a partner to change major parts of their life for him. About a week later, he asked if we could meet and talk. I agreed because I wanted some closure. He apologized for how he'd brought it up, but then immediately followed it with, I still think you'd be happier without the responsibility. I realized he still didn't understand. He wasn't apologizing for asking. He was apologizing for the timing. His opinion hadn't changed. Mine hadn't either. So I ended the relationship. It hurt. I genuinely cared about him, and before that dinner, I'd imagined us building a future together. But if someone asks you to abandon a member of your family to make your life fit their expectations, then they're probably not the right person. Update. It's now been 6 months since we broke up. The first few weeks were difficult. I questioned myself more than once. Then I'd look over at Loki asleep on the sofa, completely unaware that someone had wanted him gone, and I'd remember I'd made the right decision. Life moved on. Loki and I took the caravan out again this spring. We visited 3 new places, spent evenings watching sunsets by the coast, and had an amazing time. A few days ago, I stumbled across a local news article while scrolling online. David's picture caught my eye. Curious, I opened it. He'd been arrested for drunk driving after losing control of his car late at night. According to the report, he'd ended up in a ditch and was incredibly lucky nobody else had been hurt. Reading it made me realize something. Throughout our relationship, he'd often pushed me to stay out later than I wanted. He'd complain whenever I said I needed to get home to let Loki out, or because I didn't like driving late after a drink. At the time, I thought we simply had different lifestyles. Now I wonder if we had very different attitudes toward responsibility in general. Either way, I have absolutely no regrets. Loki is currently asleep beside me while I write this, snoring loudly after our morning walk. He's still the best decision I ever made.